remarks on this particular topic. First of all, from Mr. Gribble.
Yeah, you know, the President and the party in control in Congress has promised Americans that they'd be able to keep their health care plan, they'd be able to keep their health care company, and they'd be able to keep their doctor. There was a promise that the President made. Every American will be able to keep their doctor and their health care plan. But yet, I've heard of companies that are dropping out of health care. I've heard just recently that McDonald's was going to drop out of their corporate program until they got a special giveaway from the government. I guess if you're big enough, you can negotiate your deal. But the fact of the matter is, insurance companies are pulling out of health care, and people will be left trying to find a new doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Ribble. Mr. Kagan.
Well, look, healthcare is a complicated issue. Taking care of patients is complicated, but this is not complicated for me to understand. I'd like to explain to you very simply. If you're a citizen, you're now in a large purchasing pool that'll take effect in 2014. When all of us are in the same purchasing pool here in Wisconsin, and when insurance companies are all compelled to sell the same piece of paper and transparently reveal their prices, you're going to see some competition for our hard-earned dollars. That's what we need. Transparency. Let the insurance companies sell the same piece of paper and larger risk pools. I ran 2 campaigns on that, and I've got your support, and I've got it now. So long the way.
Thank you, gentlemen. Robert, next question, first of all, for Mr. Kagan.
Mr. Kagan, I'd like to talk about jobs for a little bit. The unemployment rates across the country right now, or at the end of August anyway, 9.6%, a little bit less here in Wisconsin, 7.9%, but can you talk a little bit about specific plans that you might have for developing quote-unquote good-paying jobs in northeast Wisconsin?
Well, the most important thing we can do today is to allow small businesses to have access to credit at a price they can afford to pay. Make sure that small businesses, who are the real economic engine of America, have access to credit. 93% of all employers in our country are small businesses. They produce 67% of all new jobs. So why wouldn't we want to reward them for their creation of jobs? That's exactly what I did. I wrote a job called the Hiring Act. The Senate got shortened to the Hire Act. And now everyone who's employing people can get a tax credit for hiring someone who's been unemployed. So we have to create tax credits, as we've already done, to make sure that small business has access to credit. Now let me explain what's going on across Wisconsin and the nation, if I have time. Regulators are coming into our banks and they're saying, call in Tom's loan. The banker says, but he's never been late on his payment. Well, that doesn't matter because the underlying asset that secures the loan, the property, has been devalued. Through no fault of his own, he's being asked to pay for somebody else's mistake on Wall Street. That's how Wall Street has won so far. So the bank examiner, the regulator says, well, we've got 3 choices, 3 options. Number 1, call in his loan, even though he's current on his payment, he hasn't done anything wrong. Number 2, raise capital in your bank, which is hard to do today. Or number 3, we close the bank. Well, I worked very hard to pass in the House of Representatives unanimously an amendment that would allow the bank, where Tom was having his loan, to spread that potential write-down, potential loss out over time, 6 to 10 years. It worked in the 1980s in the farm loan crisis. When farm property and land was devalued, it triggered loans. We allowed them to work it out over time, to put that loss on the books over time. We need to have that technique once again for small banks, but not for Wall Street banks.
Yeah, just how much, you talked a lot about the role the federal government can play in this. How much of a partnership does it have to be with the state governments to make this really work?
Well, I work at the federal level, so I'd say it's going to have to be the federal level. We've already passed 16 different tax cuts for small business, 8 different tax cuts for middle-class families. 98% of everybody who's in the middle class in my district throughout northeast Wisconsin got a tax cut through the Recovery Act, what you call the Stimulus Act. So taxes, by any measure, are the lowest that they were since 1950, according to USA Today. Tax bills in 2009 are lowest since 1950. We brought taxes down for people who need help the most, and that's the middle class. But don't take my word for it. Take the economist, Bruce Bartlett, who was the economist for Ronald Reagan, who said by any measure, taxes under this administration have gone down by $100 billion in 2009 and they'll go down by $220 billion in 2010, this year. So we've cut taxes for middle-class families who need help the most, and we've made it possible for small businesses to hang on through this great recession.
Robert, for Mr. Ribble.
Mr. Ribble, same question basically, and you've certainly come from a background of business and hiring folks, that sort of thing. You're in Congress. What sort of things are you going to be doing to help create good paying jobs in Northeast Wisconsin?
Sure. We heard a wonderful political two-step moments ago. He said we should raise taxes on those making over $250,000, and then he brags about the tax breaks that he's given to people making over $250,000. But it hasn't worked. Jobs are a function and a response to supply and demand. And if consumers don't have confidence, there's not going to be demand. And so let's talk about what would really work. Because at the end of the day, we've got to put 15 million Americans back to work. First of all, we need to get out of the White House some clarity of vision. And we're not getting that today. I almost feel like the economists at the White House and the Treasury Department are just throwing a dart up on a wall and saying, let's try this today, that didn't work, let's try this today. And unemployment continues to go up. Just today, it was announced that we lost another 39,000 jobs in September. And so we have to have clarity of vision. The next thing we need to do is we have to let the business owners have some level of certainty in the regulatory and tax environment. They need to know what's coming ahead. And if they know that, then maybe they'll take those workers off of overtime and bring a new body in. And the third thing we need to do is we need to make sure that consumers have confidence. Clarity, certainty, confidence, those types of things will begin to shove up demand. And at that point, capital will begin to flow through our economy, and employers will begin to employ, the economy will begin to grow, and we can get out of this mess.
To follow again, how much of a hindrance or a help can the federal government be as a partner with the state government?
Well, you know, as far as the help with the state government, I'm not exactly certain, but I can tell you that the government can create government jobs, and they've been pretty effective at that. But they really can't create private sector jobs, but they can put obstacles in the way of creating private sector jobs. Some of the things I just talked about are those obstacles. We don't really know what's going on. The idea, okay, let's give someone a tax credit if they hire somebody. Well, you know, I mean, as a business owner, if the government's going to give me a tax credit, I guess I'll take it. But on the same hand, if I'm going to hire someone at $50,000 a year and I get a tax credit that's temporary, it really doesn't do much good. At the end of the day, I still pay this $50,000 a year, but we haven't built the confidence in the economy itself. And so that's why unemployment is continuing to stumble. The plans out of Washington aren't working. And so what I'd like to tell Washington to do is just stop. Give American business owners a bit of a breath. That's what I would suggest.
All right, 30 seconds for some final words from Mr. Kagan.
Well, Reed is the one on this stage who supports the flat tax. That's the flat tax that Reed is in favor of, that will take away your deductibility of your home interest mortgage. You're going to lose that. At the same time, the flat tax is going to eliminate all taxes on corporations on Wall Street. You asked the question, Robert, what have I done for the district? Take a look at the stimulus bill. 30,000 unemployed workers got extension of their unemployment compensation benefits, including health care. 25,000 students had access to tuition tax breaks. 181,000 taxpayers had tax reductions, payment at work. Over 100,000 Social Security recipients received a check. 17,000 small businesses had 8 tax cuts and tax credits directed at them. We've done everything we can. Now it's time to go after the small banks and open up access to credit, as I've described earlier.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Ribble.
And the small banks aren't providing credit because of regulation. You know, it's just a wonderful thing that they've done all these things and now asking my grandchildren to pay for it. That I struggle with. And they didn't need to do all those things because all those things didn't work. And it's easy to see they didn't work. The measurables are there in front of every single one and every single American that's unemployed and underemployed. It didn't work.
Thank you, Mr. Ribble. Robert, question first for Mr. Ribble.
Mr. Ribble, I'd like to shift gears here to education. I wanted you to talk a little bit about the public school system in our country right now and what areas do you feel need improvement there?
Sure. First of all, I think I'm very, very pleased that I live in Wisconsin. I want you to know that I'm very pleased to live in Wisconsin. The Congressman and I have had the privilege of going to one of the greatest high schools in our public education system right in Appleton, at Appleton East High School. It's where I graduated from. It's where I coached volleyball for 20 years. And where I met wonderful, committed teachers and educators. Many of them have become lifelong friends of mine. And many of the parents and some of the students that I've worked with. It's been one of the most enriching things in my life to work in public education. But public education also has its share of problems. And we have to look at, you know, Congress, and I won't even say Congress, I'll just say Washington government. Big government has a tendency to want to measure results on everybody else. But they're never very good at measuring results and performance for themselves. So they'll pass laws like No Child Left Behind, they'll put mandatory testing in place so teachers teach to the test. They'll do all kinds of things to try to get results, but they never measure their own performance. When the Department of Education was started under Jimmy Carter, we had one of the best public. Today we're somewhere in the mid-teens, 15 to 18 in the world. The people that need to pass a test are the people in Washington, D.C.
Please avoid applauding during the course of the debate this evening. Thank you very much. Robert?
Just as a follow-up, the federal government's involvement, you mentioned the No Child Left Behind. I mean, has that been a hindrance then, basically, to the overall success?
Yeah, I think it has. You know, anytime the federal government decides to mandate something, when they say mandate and they require something to happen out in the public sector or in the private sector, in this case in a government sector themselves, you have to step back and wonder whether in fact you're actually going to get anything out of it. I just really worry about mandates coming out of Washington, D.C. But you know, I kind of lost my train of thought there. But I'll tell you, I just did. I'm getting old because that's where I make the Social Security. I promise it'll be there. But we have to step back at some point and let teachers and parents and administrators right here in Appleton, Green Bay, De Pere, right here in Wisconsin, educate our children. They're the best equipped, and they'll do the best job.
Robert, question for Mr. Kagan.
Mr. Kagan, yeah, basically the same thing. The federal, well, your thoughts on public education in this country and what are the areas that need shoring up?
I attended public schools for my entire student life. I'm still getting an education, so it's never really ended. I went to Jackson Elementary, to Franklin School, to Roosevelt Junior High School, went to Appleton High School, then it became Appleton East. We got to break in the new school. And when I got to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, where I was taking on molecular biology as a scientific interest of mine, I didn't have to study for the first year. It was all review. I had great educators, great teachers. We had a great work ethic. That's the kind of education I want my children to have. That's why I moved back home in 1981 with my wife Gail to raise our 4 children. But we have to put qualified teachers in every school and make sure that they're compensated to the level of their achievement. We have to make sure that class sizes don't become so large. I'd like it to be 15, not 45. Well, if we hadn't come up with the stimulus bill, we would have class sizes of 35 and 45, and our children wouldn't get that great education that they need. We have to create early learning opportunities, because the first 5 years of life, the human brain is modeling itself, it's picking up languages. It is the most important time for education, is in the first 5 years. That's why I'm so proud to be from Wisconsin. We like to say Wisconsin made, Wisconsin great. Well, our education system is better. It's just the best in the world. We invented kindergarten. We have to make it easier for our students to attend higher education, whether it's going to be technical school, a local college, or a university. And that's what we've done. That's what we've done with educational tax credits. We had the most significant and largest investment in student education in our nation's history. It was called the Student Aid and Financial Responsibility Act. We are helping children to get Pell Grants, Stafford loans, to get the great education they're going to need to compete in a global marketplace. So I'm a strong advocate